Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, let's start this Gittin daf Ayin Tes. We're going to begin on Ayin Tes Amud Aleph at the very top. Says the Mishnah, Haisai medes al rosh hagag. So you have this woman who's on the top of the roof in Vizarkula, and he throws the get to her. So as we see, he throws it in an arch. So kivan sheagil aver gag. Once it reaches the airspace of that roof, even though she didn't actually physically get it yet. Let's say the other way around. Let's say he is on the top and she's below. The Zarkulon, he throws it down to her. Once it leaves the domain of the roof, let's say the get gets erased or burned, so even though she never physically received the get, but as soon as it reaches the avir, even if, let's say, a split second before some fireball comes and burns the get, so the din is she's divorced. Says the Gemara. For the Gemara, Minter, says Rashi. Avir hagag the asis zika v'shadi lo mikmei the lanayich. What happens if you have this big gust of wind that can come, and it could end up blowing away the get, and therefore it's not considered to be like it rested. So skipping one more line, Amai katani migareshes mina avir. Why is she divorced when it just it's in the airspace? Habi'inan avir shesayf lanuach. It has to be something in which has the ability to land. But who says it's going to land? So we're into Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel begag sheyesh lo maka. We're talking about a roof which has a fence around it. And since there's a fence around it, so therefore, even though maybe some wind can come, but it's going to end up going within the fence inside, and therefore it's going to end up landing on the roof anyway. We're talking about where it was less than 3 tefachim from the roof. Anything which is in the short distance of 3 tefachim, let's call it a foot, or lower from the roof, that already is considered to be on the roof. Okay, so the Gemara says, Humul malo, let's say that he was on the top and he threw the get down. So, Abahola minter, same kasha. How is it shaykh that it should work? So in the Havamina, we're thinking, as the roof is higher than the outer walls of the chutzner, so why is it a get? So Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel shahayu mechitzos atachtainis oitmos el yonis. So it's possible, yes, let's say he is on a roof and he's throwing it down, but she has walls all around which even go higher than where he is. Same thing. So everyone basically says the same thing. It's only because there's actually, her walls are higher than where he is. Who's that like Rabbi? Which is a statement which we've seen many times in Masechta Shabbos, as Rashi says here. Hazarik b'Shabbos, Rishus Rabim, Rishus Rabim, Rishus Yachim be'Etmsa. Let's say I'm in the middle of a public thoroughfare and I throw it to a different Rishus Rabim, and in between is a private domain. So there's no issur of carrying, of throwing Rishus Hayachid or Rishus onto another Rishus Rabim. But according to Rabbi, he says you're chayiv because the fact that it went from Rishus Rabim to a Rishus Hayachid and then into a Rishus Hayachid to a Rishus Rabim, even though it never landed, but since it traveled through that airspace, it's considered as though it landed. So it's the same thing here. Maybe only regarding Shabbos they argue that you're potter. Here it has nothing to do with Rishuyos as far as, is it Rishus Rabim, Rishus Yachid? No. It has to do with, is the get being protected? Is it being guarded? So the fact is, if you have these very large walls, so that's considered to be minter. That's the reason why even the Rabban would say it's okay. Seems like everyone's saying the same thing. Rabbi Zil, Ravasi, come on, who's that like Rabbi? Only regarding Shabbos do they argue. that if a person throws from Rishus Harabim to Rishus Harabim and there's a Rishus Yachid in the middle, there you're potter. Avol hach mishum inturihu v'hakam inter. Okay, nimchak. Now what happens if, again, while he throws the get down, that somehow it gets erased? So in that situation, we said it's still a good get. So Rav Nachman Amar Rabba Bar Lo Shanu, and this is going to be TA 18. He says, Be'ez oifen im nimchak ein migrashas. So Lo Shanu, that it's good, El shenimcha derech yerida, if it got erased while it was already going down. Of a nimcha derech aliyah lo, but if while you threw it, it was still going up before it was going down, it got erased at that point, then it's not good. My taima, mikara lo lemenach koi. While it's going up, it doesn't, even though of course eventually gravity is going to pull it down, but as it's going in that direction, it's considered like it never had the connection to rest. Nisraf, which is also going to be TA 18, in which situation if it burns, is it not a get? So Rav Nachman Amar Rabba Bar Lo Shanu, that it is a get, El shekadim get with the leika. If let's say somehow, you can imagine this case, he threw the get, and then all of a sudden someone struck a match, and then the get burned. So when you threw the get, it was at that moment it was destined to land by her. Get low, but if the fire was there already, no. My tami mikaro was streifa kosel, because it was basically throwing a get into a fire, so it wasn't shayach for her to get. And therefore it's not going to work. Amar Rav Chisda Rishuyas Chalukos Begittin. So we say that when it comes to Gittin, we say Rishuyas Chalukos. Look in Rashi. Im hashi'ila habal makam b'chatzeroi. Let's say a Baal rents out a place in his courtyard, l'kabolas gita, only that particular place, in order that she should be able to mimikabel her get. Lo hishi'ila gago o beito. He's not renting out anything else, not his roof, not his house. Lo amrinan, we don't say that lo kopid, that he doesn't care, because the trei mekaimais lo moishli, as we said before, he's not renting out two places. He's doing this dafka so that she could have a get. Mishum de maisi lo harai mamastisa nakin lo hacha. Okay, so we're saying over here that we're going to learn from here that Rishuyos Chalukos Begittin, namely that two different domains. So therefore, again, if let's say he rents out a particular space and he throws in that direction, so he's not renting out anything else. So we could even split up the rishus, if you will. How does he know? It says it. He's on the top of a roof. V'zarku law, and he throws it to her. She's on the roof, and he throws it up toward her. Once it reaches that airspace, harizim gereshas. So b'maiskina, what is this case? If everything is hers, it's her house, it's her chutzner, it's her roof. So why need aver hagag? The reality is that she's just coined immediately. El begag didei v'chutzner didei. It's all his. So ki hagil aver hagag meihavi. What's the difference if it reaches the airspace? It's not hers, it's his. El pshita begag didah. It must be, it's her roof, v'chutzner didei, but it's his chutzner. So therefore, that's the reason why. The reason that she can be koinit is only once it reaches the aver hagag, because the aver hagag, the gag is hers. Okay. Then the Mishnah says, Hu milmal v'hil milmata, let's say the other way around. He's on the top and she's below. The zarko, and he throws it down to her. Kivan shiyotzam rishus hagag. Once it leaves the rishus hagag, nimchach or nisra harizim agressions. Navi begag dida. 1 second. If the roof is hers, he's standing on her roof. There's chatzer didei, and it's his. Amay megareshes, so should be fakert. El begag didei v'chatzer dida. It must be that it's his roof, which is why as soon as it leaves his hands, it's not a get, because it's within the gag, which is his. In the ratio, we said it was the case with the roof. It was hers. Here it has to be his. The chatzer didei. So ratio begag didei v'chatzer didei, seva begag didei v'chatzer dida. How it seems like a contradiction. Elav, what's the case? Must be the oishlo makam, that he lent out a place. The chan makam oishlo inchi. that a person will only rent out one place, not two. Because otherwise, how can we, the Reish and the Sefer, be talking about two separate cases? We're talking about his roof, it's her roof. It's not a raya, me the area. These are two separate cases. Okay, fine. The Reish is talking about it's her roof. And the Sefer is talking about it's his roof. So it's not a raya. Omer Rabba. Sholosh midos begin. There's three different rules when it comes to Gittin in connection to Shabbos. That which he said, that when something is traveling, it's like it lands. Again, if you throw something from a Rishus Harabim into to another Rishus Harabim, in the middle is Rishus Yachid. So Rabbi says you're chayiv because he says the din of Kaluta Kamishahun Chadami. Rabban say you're pucked. And the Hanimili in Shabbos, as we said this already. When it comes to a get, it just needs to be protected, and therefore it's a form of protection. And therefore, even though it didn't physically land, she's to get immediately. And another case, Rav Chisda said, "Nuts kana b'rishus yachid." Let's say you have a pole in a rishus yachid. It's in a private domain. Traskel, and on the top of this large pole, you have a basket. V'zark, and you throw something, v'nachal gabav, and it lands inside the traskel. It lands inside the basket. So a field gavoy mea amma, even if this is 100 amos high, chayiv. Lafish rishus hayachid oilad rakia, because rishus hayachid goes all the way to the top. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean you threw it in the Rishus Yachid. Rashi, a very important Rashi, Mizark Rishus Harabim. You threw it from Rishus Harabim into Rishus Yachid. So you can say, well, 1 second, it's above 10 tefachim. Is that a Makam Patur? No. When it comes to Rishus Yachid goes all the way to the top. Rishus Harabim only goes the first 10 tefachim. And then after the first 10 tefachim, above it is considered to be a Makam Patur. However, when it comes to Rishus Yachid, no. Rishus Yachid, even above, it's a Rishus Yachid. And therefore, if a person throws an item from Rishus Harabim to Rishus Yachid, that's considered to be your chayiv. Okay. As it's brought down this Shabbos, Dav Zayin and Beis. Okay, Dav Ches. So that's only the Gabi Shabbos. The Hanimi in Shabbos, that's only Gabi Shabbos. When it comes to a get, it's all about protection. And if you throw a get into a basket, like all the way up in the sky, that's not going to be considered protected, and therefore it would not be a get. As we continue to Ayin Testament base. V'hadiyam Rabbi Yehuda, a third thing. V'hadiyam Rabbi Shmuel. Lo yamoid adam megagzeh. A person should not stand on this roof. V'yikloit megashamim megaga shel chavera, and catch and gather rainwater from the roof of your friend. Shikashim Shidir and Chaluk in Milamata. This is also brought down at great length toward the end of Masechtas Eruvin. That just like we say, if you have two different houses, even if they're connected, let's say it's like a duplex, they're the two halachically separate houses. Kach Diur and Chaluk in Milamala. And if it's one roof, but that one roof is really, there's two houses below it. So it's not like it's one halachic roof. Again, it's discussed whether or not you can carry the whole thing, Dal Amos, if it's roofed, and it gets in great detail. But he says that there's also Diyur in the Mulmal, and therefore you don't have the ability to carry or to take water from one to the next. This is only because a person is makbid, but a person is not makbid when it comes to these things, and therefore you could use my roof. Who cares about my roof? Says Rashi. Gittin. We don't say that they're separate. That which we said before, that a person is rented out two places, because he said, I'm only letting you out this part, not this part. Maybe he's going to rent out his courtyard, but not his house. Roofs smuchen, which are right next to each other. How often do you go up into your roof? Like, what do you use it for so much? So therefore, they're not as makbid, and therefore the din is different. Rabbi, shtei chatzer zu lifnei mazu. Let's say you have two courtyards, one inside the other. So panim is shalah. The inner one is hers. Now, in order to get out, you have to go from the inner chutzner through the outer chutzner outside. So she owns the inner one. The chitzain is shlo, and his chutzner is outside. So again, he doesn't need to go to hers, but she has to go through him. Umechitzos hachitzainos oifas ala panimis. And let's say the outer mechitzos are larger than the inner ones. The zarku law, and he throws her a get. Once it reaches outside of the outer mechitzos, her is a megresha. So my taima, panimis gufa b'mechitzos hachitzaina kamintera. That the inner mechitzos are being minter by the chitzainas, which means his outer walls function for her inner chatzar as well. And therefore it works. Mash'ein kin bekupos. Not when it comes to the din of two boxes. What is that? Shtei kupos zu b'toich zu. They have two boxes, or two kalim, one inside the other. Penimis shalah, the inner one's hers. V'chitzayin shalah, the outer one is his. V'zarku la, and he throws it into her box. Afil hagil avar penimis, even if it reaches the air of this kli, in a megreshes. My time of the halo noch. When it comes to a kli, the kli is not used for its airspace, only when it lands on the bottom of the kli. So what do you mean if it rests? Which we said before in yesterday's davos, the machlokas. So we're talking about a box which has no bottom. Rashi says, munachas al gabi karka. So the get will actually land on the ground. So, fine. I think there's a question over here. Let's see. Before we get to the next Mishnah. TB. Oh, maybe it's TA. No, maybe it's 2B. Yud 18. Ha'im aver kli kaina umadua. I think this is what we're talking about over here. And the answer is going to be no. Einu kaina. The whole purpose of the walls is to protect what's in it, not the airspace. Okay, so let's see. That was TB 18. Let's see. So it says, Lishmor, the ein kli asuya ella lahaniach betocho. See what I wrote for that. It's a hard question. It's kind of like not so easy to find. Ha'aver einu kaina, kasher ein makabel tuma. Okay, I don't know. I'm not sure why I wrote that, but at least they gave me half credit. I'm sure. Says the next Mishnah. Mastis. Beishami Armim Poiter Adam Ishto Beget Yasham. You could pat your wife even with a get Yashan, an old get. Now it doesn't tell us what is a case of an old get, but the idea behind this is a person wrote a get, and then he had yichud with her, and then he wants to now use this get. It was already written before. So Beishami says yes, you can still use this get. Beishil oisrin. No, it doesn't work. Oh, okay, so the Mishnah says that. A situation where he already wrote the get, and then he was miyachid with her. So you have a machlok. It says the Gemara. But my commitment, what's this machlok Beishami is Hillel? Beishami savri. So according to Beishamai, the reason why it works, which seems like a kula, we're not concerned of a decree that Shema Yomer Gittin that a person is going to say that the get came before the child. We'll just see one more line. Sorry, I'm reading Gzer Shema Yomer Gittin. So let's look at Rashi. Shema Yishas Aget Shinatayim V'Shalosh Ben Ksivu Nasina. Let's say a person wrote the get, but didn't give it for another 3 years. V'yula Bani Mimenu. And in the interim, she had a child. B'toch hazman. during this time. Yachar kach yigarshena, then you divorce her with this get, which has it written the date 3 years ago, which means she now has a child in which people will think that the get came, that you actually gave the get, the time was on the date, but you didn't actually give it, it's not chal until you actually give it to her. So you would maybe think that this child was only after the get was given. Yomim kishish takeach hadavar, people are going to forget about it. Yeruzman haget, they're going to look at the get. Kodem latest aben, but you swore, and they're going to think shenita lemeshas ksiva, that it was taki given immediately at the time the get was given. V'yomer min hapanuya noylad mishigirsha v'havi pagam. This child, there'll be a pagam on this child. So he says, no, W. Hashem says, I'm not concerned about that issue. But that is the whole concern of a get yasha. Back in the Gemara, Omer Bababar, Omer Shmuel, im nises lo teitze. But if, let's say, they did get married, we're not going to have them leave. V'ikadiyam Omer Abba, Omer Shmuel, im this garsha, that if she gets divorced, as Rashi, beget yasha, with this get, v'holach balam dinas yam, and her husband leaves, then tinasel lechatchila. Then we will allow her to get remarried. Okay, she'll be able to get married. Okay. Question 6. Beis Hillel oisrin beget yashan umahadin b'diavad. So it says ikadi amri. Some say the imnis garsha b'holach balam dinas yam. Rashi tinasel lechatchila. The ikadi amri im nises lo teitze. Oh, the imnises lo teitze. So one says like b'diavad, but the other one is that maybe l'chatchila if he leaves. Okay. Next Mishnah. It says the Masnisin. Kasav l'shum malchus she'ena hogenes. Let's say you wrote the get, says Rashi, Mishoya b'Bavel. You're in Bavel, v'kasav b'shnas kach v'kach l'malchus acheres. And you wrote such and such a year, which is connected to a different melech. So we're always going to wonder, why is it called a malchus she'ena hogenes? You actually have to write down the proper malchus. So, what does this mean? Let's say you wrote down l'shum malchus the Madai or l'shum malchus Yavan of the Greeks, l'binyan habayis, l'chorban habayis, hayabim is b'mizrach. Let's say you're in the east. V'kasa b'marv, and you wrote that it was in the west. B'marv v'kasa b'mizrach, on different locations. Teitzim mizu. She has to leave from this one and this one. What does that mean? It says Rashi, im neses begets that. If she got married based on this get, teitzim min arishon min achsheni. She cannot she cannot stay with this new husband because it's not a good get. But she also cannot stay with the first one either. Even why not? If it's a good get, it says Rashi, sricha get sheni min arishon, beget min asheni. The question is, why does the second guy have to give her another get? If the first husband's get was not chal, then why should the second husband have to give a get? She was never married to him. So the Gemara in Yevama says, which Rashi quotes, "Time exer shemayomer girish rishon get gomer." Some people will think that she actually was divorced properly. V'nosa sheni, that she properly married the second guy. The nimshas ish yatzibul get, and that we're just allowing a married woman to leave without a get. So because not everyone realizes that this is the din, that it's not this get is not acceptable, some people think it was, and therefore her marriage was actually a good marriage. For her just to walk out could cause problems. So therefore, because of that, we require the second guy, who was never even really halakhically married to her, to have to give her a second get. Fine. So that's the din. That teitze mizeh mizeh, usricha get mizeh mizeh, she needs to get from both of them. The ein lo ksuba, so she's not going to be entitled to a ksuba v'loi peros, in which typically there's a din of peros, which a person is entitled to. V'lo mazonos, not giving her mazonos. V'lo b'lois, not the garments, as Rashi hakayomim mibegadim shehechnisa la ukanasahu The kansua, again, this is a kanas that was instituted. Lo al zeh, lo al zeh. So all these, none of the normal laws which pertain to a woman who is married will apply to this one. Lo al zeh, lo al zeh. Now, im natu mizeh umizeh taxer. If let's say she takes from one and the other one remarries her, v'havolad mamzer mizeh v'im natu mizeh umizeh taxer. If she did take it, then taxer, then she has to return it. V'havolad mamzer mizeh mizeh. We're actually going to say that the child is a mamzer. Im hechzira harishon v'yodel ben. Let's say she had a child with this first man. We're going to say that this child is a mamzer midrabanan, which is an unbelievable thing because again, really that she wasn't married to the second guy, but nonetheless, we're still going to say that she's considered to be, this child will be like a mamzer midrabanan. Okay, v'vlad mamzer mizeh mizeh v'loy zeh v'zeh metamin lo v'lo mizeh v'zeh zachan lo b'msiyos v'masyadeha v'havaras nadarela. Again, the things in which a man usually is entitled to when she's married to her. Here it will not work. He's not going to be entitled to the items she finds, the items in which her work, and he cannot be made for her nedarim, and he can also not become tummy to her. Of course, if we're dealing with a kohen, if she's a bas Yisrael, so she's going to be considered puzzled from kahuna because she's considered to have the din of a zayna. Says Rashi, the stam zayna hainu eshes ish shemizane tachas baal lacher dehainu nafkas bara. So even though we're very, very strict when it comes to this particular type of mistake, and in general, again, which is not chal, these are the dinim. As we continue now to pay Amud Aleph. All right, we're not going to see this whole mission. We'll see a little bit more. Bas Levi, if she is a Bas Levi, she's going to puzzle in a Meiser. She's not going to be entitled to Meiser. Again, it's going to be a Kanas, which is brought down to Saktas Yavamas. And Bas Kohen min a Truma. If she's the daughter of a Kohen, she cannot eat Truma, as the Gemara in Sota says. V'nitma gimel pamim. It says it 3 times. Echad l'bal, v'echad l'boyel, v'echad l'truma. That such a woman is not allowed to go back to her husband. She's usher to the husband. She's also usher to the man she had relations with, the boil. And she's also not going to be able to eat truma. She's a bas kohen. Then yorshin shilzeh v'yorshin shilzeh yorshin ksubasa. Basically, no one's going to yorsh the ksuba. V'mesu, and let's say he dies. So echav shilzeh v'echav shilzeh choltzin v'lo miyavmin. Because we have this big mess, exactly, it seems like maybe she was married, she's not married, so we're going to require chalitza, just like they require gittin. They both have to give a get if before a get was given, so, and then they die, so then chalitza must be performed. We're not going to do yibum though, because again, there's certainly the second one wasn't really halachically married. Shina shmo shmo shem yira teitzim mizeh mizeh the whole hadarachim ha'elu ba. Well, we're going to stop at that point. So let's say there's a mistake in his name and her name and the location. All these different things are going to become problematic, and therefore we're going to end up saying that the din it's not good. Okay, let's look at question 7, which we may not get to the whole thing. Let's see. Kasav l'shel malchus she'eno haigenas. If you wrote for an improper malchus, ma din alibah de chachamim, which we definitely did not see. Now, chayra, the Mishnah says beferish that it's enu mikadesh, enu mikaresh. That's not a good get. Okay. Nema tiknu malchus begittin. Okay, that we'll see tomorrow's daf. Kol raya shomer sarasein mutarais adkan.